Such a shame your credit card was declined. Given your condition and remaining balance, I can assist you with one of our complimentary early farewell packages.
Oi, oi, you muddy fugglers! Get in here, sit down, we're going to read some news. It's my opinion that the only successful societies in the future are going to be ones that are specifically centered around pacifism, because I think the technologies that we have now are dangerous enough, but what we will be able to produce in the future with AI is going to be even more insane, that it will become so important to make sure that any cultural movements are not going to try and leverage those highly dangerous technologies for nasty reasons. So I keep my eye open for anti-war movements that are legitimate, which I think runs along these lines on Wired, written by Virginia Heffernan. What if the robots were very nice while they took over the world? Well, I don't know, love. What if? First it was chess and Go, and now AI can beat us at diplomacy, the most human of board games. The way it wins offers hope that maybe AI will be a delight. The Morrissey had the right melodrama in his limbs, and his voice was strong and pained. I was at Gramercy Theatre in Manhattan to see the Smiths tribute band. I tried to get Morrissey's acid yodel in my throat to sing along. I am a human and I need to be loved just like everybody else does. But it didn't feel right to copy a copy. Most tribute bands don't practice outright impersonation, so the way this fake Smith singer captured everything about Morrissey was messing with my mind. I hope to be able to savour the music's maudlin glory without the headache of the flesh and blood Morrissey, who seemed to have aligned himself with white supremacists. Oh no, really, has he? Has he got a tiny moustache now? Bloody Morrissey, what are you doing now, sir? Stop it! The contempt in Morrissey's lyrics and politics was presumably not native to Shaughnessy, as the tribute singer called himself. Shaughnessy's performance probably didn't, as they say, come from a bad place, or a misanthropic place, or a far-right place, or even a vegan one. There's a whole grab bag of stuff there. What place did it come from? I've had this no there anxiety with ChatGPT dozens of times. When it uses idioms like in my life when it doesn't have a life, I go cold. Likewise, to invest into Shaughnessy, a gentle Manhattanite who happened to sing and dance as Moz did, the passions that were first aroused in me by the Smiths 30 years ago felt like a bad emotional bet. Maybe AI that aims to seem human is best understood as a tribute act. A tribute to human neediness, caprice, bitterness, love, all the stuff we mortals do best. All that stuff at which machines typically draw a blank. But humans have a dread fear of non-humans passing as the real thing. Replicants, lizard people, robots with skin, an entity that feigns human emotions is arguably a worse object of affection than a cold computational device that doesn't emote at all. When I go home, stuck in an uncanny valley scored with the Smiths' music, there was an email from Andrew Goff, widely considered the greatest diplomacy player of all time. This lifted my spirits. Diplomacy, a 69-year-old American strategy game, is by many estimates the most human game ever imagined. Mechanically, it's simple. 7 players compete to control supply centers on a map, and the player wins by controlling more than half of these centers. But it's played almost entirely in a series of conversations, often complex and impassioned ones. Agony and ecstasy, Moz-like agony and ecstasy no less, commonly enter the negotiations. In the live game, players are known to yell, end friendships, throw the game, or simply sit by themselves and sob. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. With his various punk haircuts and black plugs in his earlobes, is that meant to be Jeff? Goff is a Smiths fan, and he even looks a bit like the band's late bassist, Andy Rourke. To my amazement, Jeff, or Goff, once named a diplomacy board girlfriend in a coma. Why? What does that mean? Forever crisscrossing the world for tournaments and his corporate job, Goff comes across as more gregarious than most elite players of board games. Goff is also known for a brilliantly subversive kill-him-with-kindness style of gameplay. As Siobhan Nolan, the former president of the North American Diplomacy Federation, put it hurts less to lose against someone like Andrew. In diplomacy, players are sometimes forced to choose which attacks on their territory to repel and which to surrender to. Players often let Goff, I feel like his name should be pronounced Jeff, but it's spelled Goff. Players often let Goff roll his forces in because they know that he, unlike many others, won't be a dick about it. There are excellent diplomacy players who rage and issue threats hollow and otherwise. If you backstab me, I'll throw the game. Goff is not one of them. Even his breakup notes are masterpieces of directness and decency. Apologies, Turkey. I decided it was in my best interest to work with Russia now. I hope there are no hard feelings. In his congeniality is also empathy. I genuinely feel bad for players when they get beaten, even if it is me beating them. Goff told me. I believed him. The email was about Cicero, a diplomacy playing AI that Goff helped create for Meta AI. Last fall, Cicero managed to best Goff in several games, sometimes partnering with weaker players to bring him down. Noam Brown and Adam Lehrer, who were part of the immense team of experts in game theory, natural language processing, and diplomacy that created the AI, both say that Cicero is the most human-like AI they've ever created. Lehrer, who now works at DeepMind, goes further. Cicero may be the most human-like AI on Earth. Could Cicero even be conscious? A threshold for determining AI consciousness is whether the program is capable of outwitting humans in diplomacy. Is it though? I don't know. Why is that any more different than the old Turing test? Wrote Irish diplomacy champion Conor Costick in The Art of Correspondence in the Game of Diplomacy in 2015. Cicero is also something of a Goff tribute band. It plays the same magnanimous game Goff does. In one memorable slowdown, Lehrer told me Cicero played Russia and allied with a human who played Australia. Throughout the game, Lehrer said Cicero was really nice and helpful to Austria, although it maneuvered in its discussions with other players to make sure Austria was weakened and eventually lost. Well, that doesn't sound good. But at the end of the game, the human playing, Austria was overflowing with praise for Cicero, saying they really liked working with it and were happy it was winning. In general, grandmasters who lose to AIs take it hard. I lost my fighting spirit, Garry Kasparov said in '97 after losing chess to Deep Blue. I am speechless, said Lee Si-dol in 2016 after losing at Go to AlphaGo. Goff seemed to be the opposite. He was revitalized, he said. Diplomacy has a reputation for being a game of lies, but at the highest level it is anything but that. Having that affirmed by an AI was a delight. This filled me with relief. Maybe AI will just amplify what's best about humans. Maybe AI will become a buoyant tribute band for our entire species. Maybe AI will be a delight and a force humans will be content to lose to. I don't think we should lose to it. I think we should continue to encourage it along. We'll go down in peace. We really like working with you, robots, and are happy you are winning. I don't know, love. I think you should speak for yourself. Diplomacy was created in the 1950s by Alan B. Kalhammer, a Harvard student who was studying European history with Sidney Bradshaw Fay, an eminent historian. Fay's 1928 book, The Origins of the World War, suggested a compelling puzzle. Could World War I have been prevented with better diplomacy? I guess diplomacy could have prevented every war, really. Kalhammer's game is traditionally played over a 1901 map of Europe, Ottoman Turkey and North Africa. Players get to taste the thrill of 20th century empire building without all the blood, subjugation and genocide. They get so much authority over Western Civ, in fact, that modern players sometimes cosplay as Kaisers and Tsars. Though the board resembles Risk, diplomacy gameplay is more like Survivor. Everyone takes their turn in a kind of tribal council, but the action happens in the negotiations between turns. Another analogue for diplomacy might be The Bachelor. Historically, diplomacy has been known as a game for snakes and a pastime for figures like JFK, Henry Kissinger, Walter Cronkite, and Sam Bankman-Fried. But Cicero, which plays a non-zero-sum game version of the game that incentivizes collaboration, is not snaky. Mike Lewis of the Meta team says Cicero uses dialogue only to establish trust and coordinate actions with other players, never to troll, destabilize, or vindictively betray. What's more, as Lewis said on social media, it's designed to never intentionally backstab, like a canny bachelor contestant. Cicero can persuade another human to pair up with it. Didn't you just earlier on say that Cicero kept Austria weak, which kept it needy of it, and then eventually Austria was defeated? That sounds like a pretty snaky backstabby thing to do to me. I think I don't agree with that. Cicero integrates a large language model with algorithms that allow it to plan moves by inferring other players' beliefs and intentions from the way they converse. It then produces non-sounding dialogue to propose and plan mutually beneficial moves. Across 40 blitz games in an anonymous online diplomacy league, Cicero, according to Meta, achieved more than twice the average score of the human players. Over 72 hours of play that involves spending 5,277 natural language messages. Cicero ranked in the top 10% of participants who played more than one game. When Cicero wins, Goff told me there is no gloating. No, haha, you loser talk. Instead, the talk is much more, your position isn't great, but we all have games like that sometimes. Diplomacy is a niche pursuit. It's nowhere near as venerable a game as chess or Go, and it's never been seen as a universal intelligence test. Instead, it's a hobby of amateur historians. Since 1976, the game has been published by Avalon Hill, a label that is to strategy games what Rough Trade Records is to indie rock. Diplomacy is so new that it's not yet in the public domain. That stately arcade where chess and Go have acquired millions upon millions of adherents who have collectively developed these beautiful games in tandem with our human brains. By contrast, diplomacy is just getting started. It was dubbed the board game of the alpha nerds by Grantland in 2014. I guess I would call myself a diplomacy mom. When my son was in middle school, he and his friends played weekend-long diplomacy games in my apartment. We set up the August map on a dining table, hauled into the living room, served soda in brandy snifters, and burned a candle that smelled like pipe tobacco. For the boys' tete-a-tetes, we arranged folding chairs in the bedrooms. When possible, I eavesdropped on their pre-adolescent plans for the future of Europe. To my surprise, these conversations about what seemed like a technical enterprise used overwrought idioms like, I swear on my life and I mean it from my heart. Most curiously, and chronically, the boys used the phrase, I love as in I love this move. Cicero talks that way too. Okay, well the boys loved the game? I don't understand. What is that? That seems like you're turning a positive into a negative. I don't understand. As I kept an eye on the 2-day games, each of the 7 kids seemed to pass through a spectrum of emotional and physical states. They became by turns sleepy, spacey, hungry, paranoid, hubristic, defeatist, craven, and profoundly bored. Sounds like you're experimenting on children there. 1 or 2 quit. I loved the rhythm of their emotions as they ebbed and flowed. You are really very curtain twitchy. At least 2 styles of mostly ineffective play are named for the emotionalism that characterizes them: revenge-seeking and care-bearer. You don't teach an AI to play a particular game to improve that game, you teach an AI to play a game to improve artificial intelligence. Diplomacy is a game-proving ground for natural language processing. If Meta had simply been trying to build an AI that uses words to make humans do things, it couldn't have found a better way to train it than with zillions of games of diplomacy. Still, the online games like Cicero plays are markedly different from the fervent games I used to host. For one, they're short, around 90 minutes each. Solo victories, which usually require stinging betrayals, are rare, and communication is more utilitarian than passionate. Human. A little nervous with all your fleets there. Going to put mid-Atlantic Ocean fleets in Spain's south coast. Cicero, I get it, I really do, don't worry, I'm going to move Tunis to Ionia. I have no reason to attack you now. I'm going after Turkey. I can totally understand your nervousness. Human, thanks, I'll leave Spain's south coast at once after. Cicero, awesome, thanks so much for understanding. Okay, that was a conversation between a human and Cicero. When I first heard about Cicero, I assumed it would bomb at diplomacy because no one wants to buddy up with a heartless machine that's trying to sound human. If players knew Cicero was an AI, I reasoned it wouldn't stand a chance. Humans would join forces and clobber it just to avenge our species. Kostic, for his part, said he'd be more willing to stab a bot since a bot has no feelings to hurt. But as I thought about it more deeply, I realized that partnerships form for non-effective reasons too. Someone who excels at strategic reasoning could actually be a solid sidekick. Perhaps a little R2-D2 could win me over as an ally, not with human kindness, but by sharing my reading of a situation and presenting me with elegant data-driven options for how to address it. When I asked Lyra about my R2-D2 idea, he concurred. I actually think a human that used Cicero as an assistant to develop tactical and strategic plans, but who could navigate some of the human aspects better than Cicero, such as when it is safe to lie or how to avoid irritating an ally, would be super strong. Cicero definitely says awesome too much, but it can be especially irritating in that signature AI way. It sometimes hallucinates, it proposes illegal moves, worse yet, it denies saying something it just said. Faced with these glitches, Cicero's human opponents would sometimes get mad, but they didn't guess it was an AI. They thought it was drunk. And perhaps these personality glitches are a small price to pay for the bot's deep reserves of raw intelligence and foresight. If Cicero's aura of understanding is, behind the scenes, just another algorithmic operation, sometimes an alignment in perception is all it takes to build a bond. I see, given the way your position often plays out, why you'd be nervous about those fleets. Or, outside of diplomacy, I understand, since living alone diminishes your mood, why you'd want to have a roommate. When the stock customer service moves, I can understand why you're frustrated. Figured into Cicero's dialogue, they had a pleasing effect. No wonder moral philosophies of AI lean heavily on the buzzword alignment. When two minds' perceptions of a third thing line up, we might call that congruity the cognitive equivalent of love. I'm not sure I understand where you're coming from there. All the same, I wasn't seduced. To me, Cicero sounded like one of those considerate, practical, honest spouses, the kind of uncomplicated partner that die-hard Smiths fans, in it for the passion, sometimes wish they could be satisfied with. But if Cicero's gameplay was going to be more pragmatic than tender, it was still going to have to use the language of the heart for purposes of persuasion. Run away with me is a better pitch than let's save money by filing a joint tax return. Are they lyrics from a Morrissey song? I don't know. Sorry, Morrissey. For Cicero, to learn the subtleties of engaging humans emotionally, it couldn't train by self-play alone. It couldn't be left in a corner playing diplomacy against itself, churning through an infinite number of games, assuming perfect rationality in all robot players and generating intellectual capital in the onanistic way a Bitcoin miner generates currency. Self-play works well to learn a finite two-person zero-sum game like chess. But in a game that involves both competing and cooperating with fickle humans, a self-playing agent runs the risk of converging to a policy that is incompatible with human norms and expectations, as a paper about Cicero in Science puts it. It would alienate itself. In this way too, Cicero is like a human. When it plays only with itself all day, every day, it can become too weird to play with others. When Noam Brown explained to me how he and his team trained Cicero, he emphasized the metagame problem. The metagame of diplomacy, or Jack Straw's Scrabble, bowling, etc., can be seen as its place in the world. Why play this game? Why here and why now? Is it a test of raw intelligence, social skills, physical prowess, aesthetic refinement, cunning? You might play Wordle, say, because your friends do, or it relaxes you, or it's rumoured to stave off aging. An AI that is programmed to play Wordle just to win is playing a different metagame. Brown and the Cicero team need to be sure that their AI and the human players saw themselves as playing the same game. This is trickier than it sounds. Metagames can change very suddenly, and as Thomas Kuhn wrote of paradigm shifts, they can change for sociological reasons. Cultural reasons, aesthetic reasons, or no apparent reasons at all. Human reasons, then. In early seasons of Survivor, Brown told me, participants saw themselves as pursuing social goals they collectively deemed important while ignoring openings for strategic daring-do that, for later players, became the heart of the game. It's not that one game is right or wrong, Brown says, but if early season players of Survivor were to play a modern Survivor game, they'd lose. Even a social phenomenon like motherhood might have a metagame. A good mother in one era is a bad one in the next. The metagame of diplomacy has likewise changed. In its first post-war decades, players were keen to try their hands at the kind of grand European diplomacy that their forebears had so catastrophically failed at. These early players made beautiful, idealistic speeches, often invoking pacifism. Diplomacy, paradoxically, is a war game without bloodshed. The goal is to occupy centers, not blow people up. But because they also had to execute tactical goals that were at odds with idealistic rhetoric, and because the game was usually played winner takes all, they were frequently obliged to lie, thus stabbing. But then, as statecraft in the real world came to favor game theory over traditional diplomacy, the metagame likewise shifted. Online players were no longer calling for one another into Solara or billiards rooms to speechify about making the world safe for democracy. Games became shorter, communication got blunter. When someone played diplomacy by mail in the 1960s, might have worked Lego-like angles to turn players against one another, a modern player might just text Konbul or Constantinople to Bulgaria. This is the current diplomacy metagame. Game theory calculations undergird most utterances, and even humans communicate in code. Lyra joked that in modern-day online diplomacy, even human players wouldn't pass the Turing test. Before Cicero, it seems humans had already started playing like AIs. Perhaps for an AI to win at diplomacy, diplomacy had to become less a human game. Caustic, who won a European Grand Prix diplomacy event in 2000 and was on the Irish team that took the Diplomacy National World Cup in 2012, misses the old style of gameplay. The whole purpose of Alan Kalmer's design of the game, he told me, is to create a dynamic where players all fear a stab and yet must deploy a stab or a lie to be the only person to reach 18. Caustic believes that while he would have been delighted with the practical results of Cicero's website Play, Meta's project misses the mark. Cicero's glitches, Caustic believes, would make it easy to outwit with spam and contradictory inputs. Moreover, in Caustic's opinion, Cicero doesn't play real diplomacy. In the online blitz, low-stab games Cicero does play, the deck is stacked in its favor, because players don't have to lie, which Cicero does badly. As Lyra told me, Cicero didn't really understand the long-term cost of lying, so we end up mostly making it not lie. Caustic believes Cicero's metagame is off because it never knowingly advocates to a human a set of moves that it knows are not in the human's best interests. Well, that's a good foundation to have. That sounds like one of Asimov's basic laws. Don't harm a human. Stabbing, Caustic believes, is integral to the game. A diplomacy player who never stabs is like a grandmaster at chess who never checkmates. With some trepidation, I mentioned Caustic's complaint to Joff. Joff? Goff? I don't know how to say your name. Let's call you Joff now. He's turned into a Joff now. Well done, Joff. He thinks it's Caustic and his generation who misunderstand the game and give it its unfair reputation for duplicity. Cicero does stab, just rarely. Joff said, I reject outright that compelling players to stab was Kalmar's intent. I could tell we were in metagame territory when Joff and Caustic began arguing about the intent of the game's creator, as if they were a couple of biblical scholars or constitutional originalists. For good measure, Joff bolstered his case by citing an axiom from high-level theory and invoking an elite consensus. Regardless of Kalmar's intent, game theory says don't lie, he told me. This is not controversial among any of the top 20 players in the world. For one person or another to claim that their metagame is the real one because the founder wanted it that way, or all the best people agree, or universal academic theory says X or Y, is a very human way to try to manage a destabilizing paradigm shift. But to follow Kuhn, such shifts are actually caused when enough people or players happen to align with one vision of reality. Whether you share that vision is contingent on all the vagaries of existence, including your age and temperament and ideology. Caustic, an anarchist, tends to be suspicious of everything Meta does. Joff, a CFO of a global content company, believes clear, non-duplicitous communications can advance social justice. Oh, well, social justice, there we go. You like that, don't you, social justice? That's a bit of a murky word for many people. Social justice seems to be more Marxism applied to forcing outcomes. Pretty unjust outcomes, would be my opinion, but whatever. Maybe someday around the diplomacy board in my place, Caustic, who is 59, and Joff, who is 49, will light up some chocolate cigarettes and align on what to do with Austria or Turkey. What's a chocolate cigarette? As for the present, they weren't even aligned on chess. Is a chocolate cigarette like one of those Japanese pocky things? Grand masters in chess never checkmate, Joff told me. This one I resolved on my own. Chess grandmasters have, in various epochs, played all the way through to the checkmate rather than ending the game when an opponent resigns early to save face. There are still times when a checkmate is so beautiful that both players want to see it come to fruition, but Joff is right. Today, it's rare to unheard of for a grandmaster to checkmate, but it's an aesthetic matter, playing to the checkmate, just like speechifying and stabbing and being so nice that people don't mind if you beat them. An absolutist like Morrissey might say that indie rock must always be played one way, or that Britain is at its heart this way or that, but it doesn't matter. Metagames change. Only humans in all our caprice, grounded in all of our competing and cooperating supply centers, decide which games are worth playing and how to play them and why. I couldn't get over what a pleasant person Joff is. Got a very curious name though. He seemed to like Cicero even as it had beaten him. Cicero, Joff mused, played at a very high standard indeed, and it didn't just defeat him, he allowed. A few times it absolutely humiliated me, including one where it guided a beginner player to work together to beat me up. So here's the rare AI story that doesn't end with an existential reckoning for humankind, I thought. We're not staring into an abyss. Bots like Cicero are going to understand our wants and needs and align with our distinctive worldviews. We will form buddy movie partnerships that will let us drink from their massive processing power with a spoonful of sugary natural language. And if forced at the end of the road to decide whether to lose to obnoxious humans or gracious bots, we won't give it a thought. We will change our wills, leave them all we have, and let them roll their upbeat tanks right over our houses. Speak for yourself, love. But had I been played by Joff's affability, as so many had before, I wondered one last time if he might, just might, be faking his insouciance about Cicero. Once again, he set me straight. I probably had a winning record against it over the life of the experiment, he said, so he'd actually won. That was why he didn't mind. Then he added, of course, graciously, it was a close-run thing. But it would be nice to know that AI wouldn't try and destroy us in a miserable way. I would like to think we can have a future where we can grow along with it to a certain degree so that we can help guide it. I don't think we should ever hand over the keys of civilization to AI without having any controls, though. So I think the overarching strategy for the future is going to be, if you have a political movement, if you have any intention for organizing in large-ish scales, you better make sure that you have a pacifist goal, because AI is going to crush you out of existence if you don't, would be my guess. So there's a bit of a conflict with my enthusiasm for 2A and the right to self-defense. Yeah, I can see why that's a problem. But if anybody out there thinks they're going to take on AI and create some kind of anti-AI environment and enforce that through force, I think you're going to find yourself squeezed out. I think if we're going to have effective communities, we need to make sure that whatever those communities, what tech they have access to, the information they have access to, is as uncorruptible as possible, and their attitudes are as passive as possible. I'm just speculating that if AI is that smart, no one's going to be seriously allowed to use it as a weapon in any large scale. It's going to just squeeze you out some way or other. As exampled in this article with the AI Cicero being very polite in the way that it strangled Austria out of existence and had its neighbors destroy it and stuff. And Austria was like, oh, that was a nice robot. Thank you, robot, for destroying me. That's the future, basically. A big cuddly pillow placed upon your non-pacifist attitudes. Thank you for joining me wherever you are. Hit the like button if you like what I do. But that is it for now. And the only thing I have left to say is, Pigwig, out.
Oink, oinkity, snort, snuffle, snuffle, squeak, oink, oink, squeal, snort, snort, oinkity, squee.
Oink, 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 squeeze, squeeze, wee, wee, wee. Shuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squeal. Oink, 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 wee, 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 wee. Oh.
Snort, snuffle, oink, squee, squeal, ree, snort.
Oinky,
Oinkity, oink, oink, snuffle, ree, squee, snort, oink, squeal.
oink, 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 squeeze, squeeze, wee, wee, wee. Shuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squeal. Oink, 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 wee, 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 wee. Oh.
Oink, oinkity, snort, snuffle, snuffle, squee. Oinkity, oink, oink, snuffle, ree, squee, snort, oink, squeal.
Oink, 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 squeeze, squeeze, wee, wee, wee. Shuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squeal. Oink, 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 wee, 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 wee. Oh.
Squeal, squeal. Snort, shuffle, oink, ree, squeal, ree, snort, oinky, oinkity, oink, 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 snuffle, ree, squee, snort, oink, squeal.
Oink, oink, oinkity, squeeze, squeeze, wee, wee, wee. Snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squeal. Oink, 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 wee, wee,